Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Duel Screens podcast. I am one of your hosts, Stephen Fontana, and with me, as always, each and every week, it never fails, he is Andy Esimakis. How are you, Andy?
I'm in a great mood. We have a great guest this week, Stephen.
Great guest.
Very excited about this one.
We had some great news about our last show that we did. It kind of started to go viral and take a life of its own.
That was neat and unexpected news we got.
Other outlets picked up some quotes from our podcast and ran with it. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
We're famous now, is what I'm hearing. Can you...
Essentially,
so I may have to leave to go yacht shopping at some point.
Right. Let me know. You're gonna go for a 40-footer? What are you going for?
I think maybe a 60-footer.
60. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Joining us this week is Erik Johnson, the production manager over at Vertigo Gaming Inc., currently working on Cook, Serve, Delicious 3, which is available now via early access. Erik, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Stephen and Andy. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah, it's awesome to get you on the show. We're excited about it. This is one of those games that I am truly intrigued by but intimidated by, so I watch a lot of streamers play this game.
Sure.
Just to see them panic. So I'm very curious to know what goes into designing these games and everything like that. But for those of you who are new to the Duel Screens podcast, it's very simple. This is an interview show where Andy and I bring on an industry guest to tell us their story and discuss their latest project. Everyone in the gaming industry, be it a programmer, artist, a voice actor, whoever, they all have a story to tell, and we want to be the platform for them to tell that story. This podcast will post each and every Thursday on your podcast listening service of choice, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, and pretty much everything else under the sun. And our main outlet is Podbean. They host our website, our channel, and everything like that. So go to if you have a Podbean account, go ahead and follow us there. When we're not interviewing awesome video game devs, Andy and I also host the Duel Screens Gamescast. That is recorded live every single Sunday on twitch.tv/Duel Screen Streams and posts each and every Monday. And that's where we go over the video game news that we think you need to know and make fun of the news that you shouldn't know about. And also we are doing some seasonal content, which posts every other Friday. And right now the seasonal show is Andy Explains It All. And Andy, the most recent episode was all about Parasite Eve. That was a fun one.
Yeah, it was really good. I forgot a lot of stuff about that franchise, but it all came rushing back to me. All those repressed memories.
So yeah, just jumping in. Congrats on all of this. It sounds like I'm here as the victory lap kind of from a couple of nice developments for you guys. So congratulations on that front.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're certainly hitting our stride, and we're having a blast. And remember, folks, you get all three of these shows and every show every other seasonal show that we do for 2020. It's all on one channel, so you don't have to subscribe to other channels just so that we can get more money. It's not about that. All we want is for you to like what we do and pick and choose what you listen to, and it's all on the one feed. You don't have to go crazy. But if you do listen on Apple Podcasts, if you could give us if you like what we do, give us a 5-star review. If you're so inclined, that helps the show get in front of more eyes, especially on because Apple's reviews get pushed to many different platforms. For example, I use Podcast Addict, and it pulls from iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever the hell they call it now. It pulls from their reviews, so it does help the algorithm in other areas. And if you want to support us monetarily, it's very easy to do so. We have a Patreon. You go to patreon.com/NDS podcast, just like our Patreon producer, Colton the Apprentice Nestler. We cannot continue to grow without all of your support. It helps us keep the lights on. It helps us get better equipment. It helps us really... the biggest thing that it helps us with is our energy, because when we see people that want to support us with their hard-earned money, it really pushes us to put better and better content out there. So we do appreciate everything that you do for us, and we are going to continue doing as much interesting and unique content as we can for you. All right. Erik, it is time. We want to know all about this thing. Cook, Serve, Delicious 3, which... of course, is the third, but this one's really starting to make waves. It's in early access right now. Why don't you give us the little elevator pitch? What is Cook, Serve, Delicious?
So, sure. Cook, Serve, Delicious as a series is sort of a stressful restaurant management, game that David Galindo came up with. He probably started working on it a decade ago. David Galindo is the creator man of Cook, Serve, Delicious 1, 2, and 3, And I wouldn't be here, the writers wouldn't be here, the voice actors wouldn't be here without David. So David is like the crux of all this. He was working on a game inspired by I believe a Japanese PlayStation 1 game. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it was a food-based cooking, restaurant management game in a similar vein. He wanted to kind of bring some of that over into what he was thinking of for his own, version of it in his own mind. And that's where Cooked for Serve Delicious 1 spawned. I'm not giving you an elevator pitch of it at all, like you asked me. I'm not like paying your question at all.
Hey, listen, you run with this ball, man. I handed it off. You just go with it. We'll follow the bouncing ball. Don't worry.
Well, let's pivot back to actually answering the question. Cooked Serve Delicious 1, 2, and 3, popular restaurant management sims that have picked up every time we release a new title. I think it gets a little more notoriety. Really, it's about playing fast and proficient and perfect, I think is the way to think about it. You have 7-minute days in Cook Serve Delicious 1 and 2, right thereabouts, that contain a couple of rush hours throughout the day. And you have to whip up all the different meals and requests for them as quickly as you can. In 3, we have taken a little bit of pivot, which I think you should probably do when you get to a third title in the series. We are going on the road in a food truck, mm-hmm. and we're taking a lot of the lore from the second game that the writers so lovingly put into it via these email messages that, I don't know, I can't put a percentage on it, but I'm guessing a high percentage of players may have never actually interacted with or ever even saw, because it's not part of the main game. Well, we brought a lot of that into 3, the idea of, hey, this isn't present day, it's actually like in 2038, and some stuff has happened. A lot, like especially with in relation to the landscape of the United States. Not a whole lot has changed in terms of people needing to eat food and looking for delicious food when they can. But we were bringing a lot more of the kind of, I don't know if there's an on-brand name for Vertigo Gaming Inc. We're goofy. We have some really stupid things that we have that have kind of coalesced over the period of this series that we might not have even planned to have happen. Everybody kind of made fun of the droopy, sad-looking people, but as they realized it was the post-apocalypse, they kind of just said that makes sense, that kind of stuff. Just sort of, so the art sort of played into what was the lore that we kind of created around what we were working with the series. Anyway, I'm going on, but 3 is this sort of a realization, I think, of a lot of the love and care and just oddballness that was put into 2 in particular. And 1 certainly has it to some extent too. 1 is obviously the base of all this, and 1 is a big time seller. A lot of people know 1, not as many people know that 2 even exists. And so our job with 3 is, of course, to make sure that people hopefully know it exists. But it is that's the life of an indie developer anyway. You're always struggling to get I can't imagine it's too different on our side of the table with your side of the table in terms of, you mentioned the almighty algorithm, things like that. We are in the same boat. Maybe different companies are controlling that boat, but we are in the same boat in that sense for sure. Ours is Steam, of course, but for PC anyway.
Yeah, they definitely control what people are going to buy. It's very odd how they do that, and they always come kind of full circle. Like they always get lambasted for a little while, and then they kind of overcorrect, and then they it's like the Wild West, and then they start curating again, and it gets a little hard to be seen again.
And
so tell us, what exactly are we doing with either the controller in our hand or the keyboard? Because I did not play this game. Mm-hmm. However, I have watched a few streamers play, and seeing them get in the zone, and you hear their mechanical keyboards clickety clackety clickety clackety, and they're saying to themselves, "Okay, I need this, and mm-hmm. then just like click, 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 and then it's done, and then it's done." So is it like a memorization, like you're memorizing keystrokes or button presses that give you ingredients, and then you just kind of put them in the right order, and then send the dish out? Like how does it work?
So yes, most of that what you said is yes. Andy, feel free to jump jump in if you feel like you can add some perspective as the new player that has jumped in over the last week on 3, I think.
Well, I think during my initial chat with you before we started recording I feel like it's like the rock band of restaurant management is just a lot thrown at you, and it can be a little overwhelming at times, but it's so satisfying when you get the actual order right. But the brain does explode throughout the entire experience, but in a good way.
Right. In CSD3, there's so much to it, right? We've added it's the culmination of what we've been building up for 1 and 2, not just in the lore, but in the menu items. We have, and I think we had several hundred, maybe not several hundred, but a few hundred new foods in CSD2. Well, we're going to be up near 1,000 for this one. And the international fair is just, it's unbelievable how much just foods that you probably have never heard of unless you're an international cuisine connoisseur. There's going to be new things that you come across that it's awesome. People are inspired by it and say, I've never even had this before. I'm going to try to find it or make it or whatever. So that's really just a cool, rewarding thing. But back to just the gameplay itself. The idea, if you're playing on, it's a keyboard-based game, I think, or originally. And we've added the idea of you can play it mouse only, you can play it controller only. The controller scheme took a little bit to kind of figure that out because it's like a typing game to some degree. I wouldn't describe it as a typing game like proper, but it is certainly, you're looking at doing swift keystrokes. Lasagna has a very familiar run of 4 keys that you do that has existed in the series since Quick Serve Delicious 1. It's really about with the controller. It's a little bit about like trigger holding, and then because we have to come up with there's so many different ingredients, right? So the controller, we actually have like this trigger hold scheme. There's pages you have to turn. It's pretty intense. Like Andy said, it's a lot to take in at first, especially if you haven't played 1 or 2 before. 3, I think, is kind of, you're jumping into.
It's like a master's course of the series.
It's the deep end for sure.
Yeah.
That said, the accessibility, we've worked really hard on that to say, if you're going to, you put together your own menus in this game. So essentially, we'll give you a selection of foods and you get to choose those, which, from those options, which you want to pick from, and they're labeled like from 0 to 5 points overall. And the higher the points, the more difficult it is to put together. So like you said, there's going to be some things that you need to put together, like tiramisu. Obviously every ingredient needs to be stacked like it's supposed to. There doesn't need to be out of the way. Like a bacon cheeseburger with lettuce, tomato. We don't expect you to know, hey, the tomato needs to go on top of the burger. Just slap it together and throw it out there. As long as you're getting the ingredients what they've requested. So that in that case, like the cheeseburger is slightly different than the tiramisu because of how it's expected to be put together. Some foods, as in reality, in real life, it matters the order you put it together. Some other foods, it's probably not as big of a deal. I can think of a lot of Hispanic food that I wouldn't really care how you ordered it in terms of like the different ingredients. Like just slap it together for me and put it in a tortilla, and I'm gonna like it.
And do the customers change the order? Like, do they say, "Hey, I want this dish, but without this," or is it just they just order the dishes and you just go through like your memory, whatever you could remember how a dish is put together, you just do it as fast as possible to get them out?
So we have foods that do both, essentially. So foods that a corn dog is going to have like a variation of it's going to be plain ketchup and mustard or mustard, I guess. So like 4 variations of that. Okay. They'll come in, they'll order it, they'll say dry dog or ketchup, mustard, that kind of thing, and you're just quick. We have pho in the game, and that's just it has 6 different ingredients like cilantro, lime, or onion shoots, and you'll get different basil. You'll get different orders with different 3 of those or 2 of those or 4 of those, and you just got to kind of keep your eye on that. Some of them, like the cheeseburgers, have names. So the Ryan Davis, for example, I believe, if I remember this correctly, is 2 patties, 2 pieces of cheese, tomatoes, and a regular bun. Now, when you first see the Ryan Davis, whether or not you know Ryan Davis, you're just like, I don't know what that means in terms of what what is this actual, what are the ingredients of this? I have no clue. The Ryan Davis tells me nothing. However, for veteran players, you do that so many times that suddenly the Ryan Davis is, exactly what the Ryan Davis is, and you don't have to look at the individual ingredients as you get to know those different kinds of orders that have names to them that aren't just custom orders, because some things will just be custom and you'll be like, okay, well, this is a custom sub. It's going to have very specific ingredients that I'm always going to have to look at and see what they are. But some is going to be like, hey, I know that pizza. I know what's on that pizza. That's a standard, or I know that's a standard sub or pizza order that has very specific ingredients to it. After a while, and that's kind of, I think, a graduation for certain players. Yeah, if that makes sense, where you suddenly go, I don't have to look at some of these ingredients all the time. I know what it's going to be, and I'm just going to trust myself to do it, because that's kind of the game, is that it's too fast for you to not trust yourself on things. If you don't trust yourself and you're hesitating and looking around, you're screwed. There's no way you're going to get a perfect score.
Listen, Eric, I'm trying to avoid stress eating while playing this game, because I feel like a game like Final Fantasy 15, with its gorgeous-looking entrees and menu options, at least they were fictional. Like, if I would make a Chocobo burger or a Mog slider, I couldn't actually eat it in real life. But at this point, I feel, Steve, we have packs like we're less than 10 days out at this point. If I gain 20 pounds between now and then, it's because I'm trying to find on Seamless a Banh Mi, a Croque Monsieur, and a Halo Halo 2 in the morning. Because I'm playing this fucking game.
I think that's something we get all the time, is that we're like the food channel. You're not supposed to play when you're hungry, and if you do, that's just kind of, that's your choice. Our food artist is awesome. There's some, we've heard,
it looks scarily realistic.
We've heard minor complaints on certain things, but I think some of the main,
who's complaining about what's,
well, there's so many different art pieces, right? So you think that at some point somebody would have a problem with something, but the main things, like just like I love, we have the roast beef sandwich, like the fast food roast beef style. Like, this is where we get into, like, we talked about like what we can and can't say. Like, I shouldn't be able to say that, like, that's basically just something from Arby's, but like, I mean, it's a roast beef sandwich, like with like beef and cheddar kind of style. And we have it on we're gonna have it probably at our PAX East booth on later this month, because we have these, we made up these signs for the last PAX we went to at PAX West, and we were like, we got to put some of this food on there. And so there's just, you wouldn't think it's that impressive, but the beef and cheddar looks exquisite. It looks really good on that poster.
People came there to eat, didn't they?
And so I just love it, because that kind of stuff, it's just little, I don't want to call it intangibles, because it's not really intangible. You can point to what it is, but the quality of that art brings people to our booth, brings people to the series before they even know how to play it, before they know really anything about it. And it's not a huge surprise that humans connect with food, right? This is not a groundbreaking discovery by us, the developers, that we like food as people. We eat food, obviously, and so there's just that's more of a like intangible connection that, oh, it's a game about food. I like food. It's like everybody. There's just not that many people who are not going to have that mindset on the approach. They really have to not gel with the gameplay at all if they're going to be like, nope, I'm skipping this. So as the product manager, as the marketing and PR person, I mean, this is shooting fish in a barrel for me. I mean, this is such a series that sells itself. I just need to make sure I'm doing the right things, make sure we're getting it to the right people, make sure our timing is correct, because if we do this right, the game is just a really attractive thing to a lot of people for a variety of different reasons.
Steven, don't you dare mukbang shame me, okay?
Listen, it's not about shaming you. It's about logging into our shared YouTube and seeing bunch of really thin people stuffing their face in a thumbnail.
Interest in watching people eat. All right, we all have a love for food, and that's why we're here to discuss that shared passion for shoveling food in our faces. Food that looks great. Mm-hmm. Right.
Because this also plays into the idea of, cooks and chefs and line workers, people who've worked on line cooks and waiters and waitresses. We've talked to them. They have kind of a little bit of a, post-traumatic thing with this in some ways. They go, this is reminiscent. But some of them are like the farm simulators. They work on the farm all day. They come inside and they play farm simulator and stuff. So I think that we have some that connects as well in like kind of a sick and twisted way with some of these folks and stuff, because it's like, hey, they appreciate the reality of a short order restaurant, basically the intensity of that, the call that you have to take on. And we appreciate that too, because we're just pressing buttons over here. To imagine actually doing an 8-hour shift at like an actual busy, like the Chick-fil-A,
lucky.
Like the Chick-fil-A in Hollywood, I couldn't even imagine. It's just smashed constant. I mean, it is absolutely packed all the time. If you work there, you would just never stop. The subway in front of PAX West. I mean, it's just location. Subway's not that great to me, but because of where it is, it has 100 people at it all the time. You go into your shift, you are making sandwiches constantly until you're done. I couldn't even. We all had our Joe jobs back in the day, but that's pretty intense. And so we have like a lot of mutual respect for people who come by. A lot of times we'll talk to people at PAX who are like, oh God, what is this? And it's like, oh, do you work in a restaurant? And they're like, yep. So we have that definitely happens.
Yes, that was my career before my current career. I was a restaurant. I started as just like a busboy and worked my way up to manager and all that fun stuff. So like it definitely gives a little PTSD. You smell this ketchup a little bit when you're playing.
Yeah,
I just kind of smell it, and you're like, oh, no.
I just got rid of the pizza, the car I delivered pizzas in, like, in my college days. I just got rid of that car like 3 or 4 years ago, and that scent was still like it was getting the new car was a new dawn for me to not have that like really old Pizza Hut smell in my car anymore.
Ooh, Pizza Hut. Mm.
So pizza. Let's talk about this game's very wild and weird plot. It's set in the distant future, and you're
not too distant, 2038. So like 18, so 20 years.
Some years from now. And you're going across a war-torn America. Let's set the stage for this. Why are we in this current state? What brought us there?
Sure. So CSD2. This was I kind of mentioned it before. How the emails in CSD2 kind of pointed to the alternate reality of the situation that nobody really paid attention to or looked into, because you're still playing a cooking game that involves people ordering food. There's not a whole lot of things that we put into 2 that was just obviously shouting what the situation actually was in terms of the time, and it was just something David was throwing together as sort of this. Why not have a story, and why not have some elements of lore going on with this as well? Especially as we got into the second game of the series, it made complete sense to just start. If it was natural, might as well do it. Mm-hmm. So with 3, we talked about doing 3 in different ways, and this is where my boss David probably won't get mad at me for this. This might be the NDA thing, but at one point we looked into actually doing Cook Serve Delicious 3D, as in actually a 3D version of the game.
Interesting.
That would have been neat.
It would have been if it was doable, and I don't think it was. It might be at some point. With our budget, though, it was asking a lot, and so we were just thinking, this might not be right, especially when we just couldn't find the right. We needed another developer team to work with, kind of in tandem with that on. We weren't going to be able to handle that ourselves, I don't think, on our own.
As a VR sort of situation, or like how would you have tackled that?
I think that was a distinct possibility. Yeah. I think it would have been PC and VR and gone from there. Thinking of some of the early VR successes, the guys who did I Am Bread. There's a bunch of just weird fun ones that from the first person perspective could be interesting for Cook Serve Delicious, but it was a lot of changes. It was a lot of breaking of the series that like in 3 it's really a continuation of what 1 and 2 has built, whereas if it was 3D that would have gone pretty much off the rails there and into a new space. Maybe not in the actual prep of the food, but in the existence of the space, it would be just completely different. Maybe that wouldn't have been that big a deal. I'm not really sure. I'm not even sure if it would have been. It's an interesting idea in theory, but in the end, if the gameplay was still desired to be the same, then that kind of goes back right to the 2D stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad to share. I'm actually glad to get that off my chest because I rarely talk to anybody about that ever. And I don't think it's a really massive, big secret or anything that we have to keep at our company at this point. But yeah, Quick Serve Delicious 3 at one point was being considered as a 3D game as opposed to a food truck kind of slight departure from what we had done with the restaurants. So kind of time passed and things weren't kind of working out with a 3D idea. So we pushed towards a new idea. David said, hey, I've got this kind of thought that we can maybe go a little zany, maybe push it out a little bit with 3 in a way that people aren't expecting. And I think the idea that it also kind of coalesced that there was the idea that with the team that 2 was lacking to people in certain audiences or certain parts of the audience of our community because it didn't have the same kind of progression and campaign that the first game had. So we really wanted to make sure that we got that right in the third game. And we also didn't know necessarily if we stayed within the realm of the restaurant, the Tarragon Tower, if that would not really be that big of a departure. Why make 3 if it was kind of the exact same as 1 and 2 that you were, posted up in your restaurant and or going on kind of cook for hire type assignments. So with 3, it was let's take the building away. Let's do. We didn't even think. I think maybe the food truck and this idea of, hey, what about a trek across this weird alternate reality United States that the team had, or North America, I should say, that the team had kind of, the writing team had come up with in the emails in CSD2, Texas being completely walled off, Washington and Oregon being completely nuked, Washington being annexed by Canada, all this weird stuff. Wow. Wisconsin is surrounded entirely by a moat and only government trucks with water go in and out. Just all this just really wacky stuff all over the place. And they had made all that in 2, but it's not like you could visit it or you could just know about it. You couldn't actually interact with it in any tangible way. But in 3, what if the campaign was you drive a food truck across all this crazy crap that they had come up with in 2, right? I mean, it was so this is insane and also it's going to work. We just thought, hey, this is a great idea. It makes the game move. The campaign it's just a road trip, and then it got into the idea of there's this running kind of joke that the cooks, or the main chef anyway, is just in 1 and 2, he's just this fiery looking, I'm so busy, constantly stressed, busy, but getting the job done perfectly. He has fire in his eyes in the artwork in 2. And in 3, he's just this really tired guy. He's like, I'm just tired. I'm so, so tired. And the idea, spoiler alert, I guess, for the opening sequence in 3 is that the tower that they've worked at, that the chef or chefs, because we have different versions of the chef you can play. In Cook Serve Delicious 1 and 2, the tower that they worked at was destroyed, and essentially while the chef was inside of it, or close by. And these 2, we did voice acting for this. This is the first time we did voice acting for a game on Vertigo or for Cook Serve Delicious series. We had a couple of streamer friends that we thought that would work out really well for this. Havana and Niga Oryx, and they play these. So to make sense out of the fact that they play these 2, robots. I guess they're basically cyborgs. No, excuse me, androids. Excuse me.
With the best names, also, by the way.
Whisk and Cleaver, right? Yeah. They're part of a ongoing robot war that is only involving robots, and basically there's a protocol to not involve humans. Period. You cannot shoot humans. You cannot. But this blue war has been going on like a Cold War with AI and robots all over the states, if not the world. And so that in mind, they're kind of the, humans exist, but robots are kind of like the most populous individuals in the area.
They're the alpha situation.
Right. Humans, they're still ordering food and stuff, but they're kind of just staying out of the way of all this, post-apocalyptic stuff, basically. And so two of them, Whisk and Cleaver, are essentially wrecking crew rescue kind of bots, and they come across the explosion of the tower, and they're just trying to look for salvage whatever they can, and they go, hey, it's the chef from Cook Serve Delicious, oh my gosh. And they have this super famous chef, of course, in their world, so they're as a couple of robots super excited about that, and they're like, hey, let's I got a great idea. Let's do a road trip where he's cooking. And there's definitely been this running kind of perception that the chef is just kind of taken against his will by these two robot women.
He's enslaved.
No, I'm not. Now that's something that's NDA. I will not commit to that one way or the other. Because for sure, I think being vague on that is just a stroke of brilliance, and we should keep with that, because I think I don't think we should lean into it either way. Let me say that.
So it sounds like you're traveling in a truck across the United States, delivering food to a post-apocalyptic country. So is this, or is it not, the second Strand game?
Oh.
That's
Death Stranding confirmed.
That's kind of blowing my mind. We had obviously Mad Max with food trucks, because there's a lot of because of the robot wars. There is some gunfire that you have to deal with at times. Not directly at your person, but at your food truck or at your tires and things of that sort. So we've added a couple. The chores that were from the first couple of games are gone, but we've introduced some new kind of elements around the food that you have to kind of deal with as well, and that includes getting some of your holding stations shot out or malfunctioning, essentially where you can keep extra food up, and then, gosh, we haven't even talked about any of the really major gameplay differences with 3.
Well, it sounds like you guys really took the feedback from Part 2 and addressed it like whole cloth, because I think some of the key points were that, again, there was the campaign that you brought up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And now with the whole food truck mechanic, you can actually stop and fill requests instead of having all one continuous flow of orders. That kind of gets too overwhelming at times.
Sure. And this is definitely, like you said, the master version of it if you want it to be. I think it's accessible enough to say, I'm going to set it at this level for myself. The difficulty, basically, you set yourself as you go through each individual level or route or whatever you want to call it. I think we're calling them routes, so let's go with that. But it's really about speed for us. We were wondering, this is the first game we've introduced the auto serve button, essentially, where the idea is Whisk and Cleaver can serve food that is prepped and ready to go for you. Now, usually you would do this if there was a blue check mark by it. You would hit the 1, 2, 3, 4 key if it was in those corresponding order slots. But now there's an auto serve where you can serve all of them at once, rapid fire. So you can, if you have all 8 or 9 or whatever of your orders completed and done and ready to ship out, and they have all those blue check marks by them, if you hit the control key or if you hit whatever it's the right stick on controllers, it will automatically serve all of that at the exact same time and bring in 8 new orders like lickety split. So it basically lets us throw more at you and let you cope and actually take more orders on. So even though the gameplay as far as mechanically is a bit different in the sense that instead of a 7-minute day, like you said, that's kind of it's a drip at some points, and then the full rush, the dam breaks a couple of times at lunch and dinner. Now this is more about, okay, you have 3 to 5 stops. We're going to have about 6 to 8 online orders come in as well, and we have a bunch of people waiting for these specific other foods as well. So you're thinking about about 5 to 8 foods at a time that you have to kind of balance. Some might show up more than others. Each level kind of just depends on how it goes. And each stop, it's really about that preparation before hitting the stop. Did you get all of those individual online orders addressed? Are they cooking? Are they getting ready to go? Are your holding stations up top? Are those all ready to go with the different kinds of holding station food that you need? And there are so many of them. And you can look at your menu for each stop and say, okay, I know I need 10 of these, 13 of these, 6 of these, and 2 of these. And that's kind of how you have to think about it. And so there's, like you said, there's a lot of information to take in the early going that is going to be a little overwhelming at first, for sure. As you go, okay, how do I best tackle all of this? And you get kind of the timing down that it's like, hey, I can't wait around for this. I need to get on these things, these orders right now, because when I hit the stop, I'm not sure if you've seen some of the, one of our best streamers is Bear Taffy, and
It's a great name.
He's got, he just, he's one of our better players for sure that you just kind of jump on and watch. And he's really about hitting the stops in an idea of his sort of narrative on that is, I'm going to hit this stop. I'm going to throw the food out the truck and we are off. Like, we are not going to be stopping at this stop for more than 5 seconds if we don't have to. And some stops kind of oblige that. Other ones have 40, 50 customers that you're like, okay, I gotta just keep up, not let these things run down. They have patient meters that run out. If you're playing the standard mode, we do have a chill mode for people who do not want to be stressed at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but the regular standard mode is really about get the adrenaline pumping, try to get everything out in a timely manner, which is always going to be. It should feel tight. The timing should always be if I make a hesitation, it's going to bite me. I feel like it's so that you have that feeling of when you do everything right and you don't hesitate and you get it right. It's such a just satisfying feeling to get just an order right, let alone get a perfect day right once you get started in that sort of endeavor of I want to get better at this game. So I think that's definitely a big. We talked about a lot of this, the lore and a lot of the sort of ancillary things that attract people to this game, but it's the core gameplay that keeps people around for hundreds of hours.
Well, to take a step back for a second, because this series has sold over 1 million copies, did you think it would get this popular? Because when I think about games that involve cooking food and serving it, I think about Cooking Mama, and more recently Overcooked. But then this game comes along and it has a massive audience, a huge following, and it totally blows my mind that this game, not to downplay it's why is this shit so many followers, but it works on so many levels. It just clicks with so many players.
I think
happening.
Yeah, well, I came on in 2016, so full disclosure, CSD1 had already sold about probably 750,000 copies at that time when I joined on. I probably wouldn't be with this series and with this company if it hadn't gone as one hadn't gone as well as it had, or at least to at least some percentage of that. David really earned it. He made lots of different games that were flops. CSD1 was basically not coming out in a big way like he had kind of hoped, and that was sort of his swan song. I mean, it really wasn't something that indicated a lot or said, okay, we're going to be doing, he was going to be like, I'm going to be able to make games and I'm definitely going to make a CSD 2 and 3. There was nothing like that in mind whatsoever when CSD 1 came out. And it had gotten some sales back then. You could actually get some sales without having to work your butt off for it. That's not the case anymore whatsoever if you're an indie developer. But back then people would just put the money down and pay for a game because there wasn't thousands and thousands and thousands of other choices like there are now, basically. But anyway, digressing from that, CSD1 caught a couple breaks, just like most notable indies do. Ryan Davis, who I mentioned before, the late Ryan Davis of Giant Bomb, covered the game in a like super notable moment for the series, or for the game anyway. It picked up a bunch of sales off of that. It spiked. This, again, back in the time where you could get an article from a big site and that would be an automatic sales conversion. Not the case anymore.
That meant something back in the day. And I have streamers that basically will push sales for you instead.
And they don't do that great of a job either. So it's like, it's really, really tough. I mean, it's really, really hard nowadays. I cannot stress that. So enough from our perspective, from the indie developer perspective. But CSD1 took off from there, right? I mean, had other breaks. Felicia Day loves Cook Serve Delicious, has streamed the third one. We have a lot of different kind of, notable folks, if not celebrities, then notable people online, people with influence, obviously people with audiences that cheer every time there's a new Cook Serve Delicious thing. So again, I said my job's easy, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, there are people that are kind of ready to go to bat for this game that don't work for us, that are notable, and it's just a huge leg up versus compared to a lot of other indie developers, especially those who are new to the scene and or have like a new IP that they're trying to get people into. So from that point forward, CSD2, that didn't go as well as we wanted to, like we talked about. We should have, in hindsight, that would have been a great early access at that point when it released in 1.0. It's for CSD2. We didn't do that though. We didn't release it in early access like we probably should have at that point. Because with 3, oh my gosh, we released in early access. We did like a early access beta with a lot of our community from 1 and 2. And just why wouldn't we have at least taken in a lot of the players' feedback? We're not going to act on everything, of course, but why not have them in, especially the hardcore folks that are really into it. But you got to have new players and old alike to get good results out of that. But we just didn't do that for 2. We just released it, and we did have some play testing, but not to the level of 3. And we didn't go 1.0 with 3 right away. We said we're going to do this in early access. We're going to open it up to a bigger audience than we already have opened it up to with our beta group. And that's just been such a major boon for the game, because everybody goes, look, they're just doing everything right, because we're still in the early access or pre-early access or early access phase. Whereas when you launch a game and it's 1.0, like we did with CSD2, and there are things that people don't agree with, or that there are things that say this is an issue, you should have this. Well, then that looks really bad, and it's not going well. And David was super stressed. So I think 3, when we were doing 3, the idea was, how do we launch this that is just the polar opposite of 2? How do we, we're going to be ready to go this time. We're going to not just marketing PR ready to go, but we're going to have the game in a state that people are going to go, this is great. And if it's early access, that gives us the opportunity to say this is great, but wouldn't it be great if you added this or that kind of stuff. And we can still take that in and not say, oh, well, it's 1.0, it's post-launch, we'll have to consider that. No, it's all part of the process. So just taking a long, circuitous route back to answering your question here, is I think, it's a million seller based on its gameplay, based on people just being willing to talk about a game that, one of the best things indies can have is word of mouth, a game that affects you enough personally that you're saying, I got to tell someone else about this. I cannot stress how important that is, to have a game that makes people feel that way, because that is definitely how you climb up in sales now. You have to have people who are just really willing to say, that have no affiliation with you, say your game is awesome. I'm going to go tell everybody I know about it. And people have been doing that since 1. And it's just been this, I wouldn't say slow and steady, but it's been a very steady climb. We haven't had anything that's happened in CSD3 that's said, oh, we've gone viral or anything huge, but it's managed to break expectations, and we still have our console releases in 1.0 coming up. So it's just, to me, from my job's perspective as project manager, it's really about just you helping David guide the ship here, because he's got a really good ship. Right? Does that make sense? Something that is
a good food truck.
Right. There's a lot of crewmates on this food truck ship, and so there's a lot of people that are willing to continue to promote and really support us, as long as I think we don't mess it up. And I mean that that mess it up is a very vague term in that sense, because there's a lot of things you can do to sort of rock the boat in a bad way. But I think we're very aware of that. I think I think people might have been thinking, oh, well, they understand how to go about making a sequel, but there's not going to be enough newness or love behind what we do to really realize a third game in a series that people said, yes, this should exist. And so that was a huge goal for us as well. It's just to have a game that people said, oh, this is great because it's familiar, yet it's so strange. Familiar to CSD1, obviously, and 2, but all this new stuff, all this.
Right.
And yet, if I know how to play the game, I don't really miss a beat. If I knew how to play Cooks Are Delicious 1 and 2 well, then CSD3, there's some new things to learn, but you're not going to miss a beat as far as like your veteran stewardship of the game.
Right. And it also kind of sounds like this series, or at least with part 3, sort of really helps legitimize and champion the early access program, because when CSD2 launched, it was a very different version from what it ended up being, because you guys had like free expansions, massive restaurant modes, and updates and recipes. So it sounds like, do you think people should embrace that model more, having more of an open, more transparent development process? Like, here's our game as what it is today. We'll charge you for it, but you get a sneak peek, and you can help us actually build this thing and make it a more better final product.
That's a really tough question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because early access is now 5 years old, maybe a little bit more than that now.
Because it gets maligned, I think, by a lot of people for obvious reasons. But
rightfully so, right? Yeah. Rightfully so. Is it maligned because when it was originally a fad, people took advantage of that fad. Developers took advantage of that fad.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of taking the money and running, maybe even it wasn't so conscious in all these cases. Subconsciously, we can do this. Oh, we ran out of money and we didn't do it, and it's over, and it's not a finished product, and a lot of people have paid for it, and you know what I mean. And so that's the downside of early access. And it became really apparent to developers over the last few years that early access was no longer a cash cow. It had been milked by bad people, basically, or people that weren't in control like they should have been, or could show control like they should have. So with early access now, you have to. And I worked on another game called Duskers. Like 5 years ago now. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But Duskers early access taught me, if you're going to go out in early access, you need to have something that is, obviously has to be a certain amount of substance. It doesn't have to be like substantial, tons of content, but you have to have your base game kind of figured out, your base mechanics, everything kind of in place. And to me, the more polished your early access build is, the better it's going to go. So there's going to be that catch-22 of how much do you polish a build for early access before you go, well, this is basically done. This is 1.0. So it's not, there's a lot of, I think, roads to kind of cross and say, okay, is this right for early access now, or that kind of thing. I think some alternatives to early access, and when I say early access, I mean on the Steam store. So alternatives, I should say, doing a beta release privately, that's invite only, doing an itch.io type release, basically an off Steam kind of early access, if you will. But that leap onto Steam is a major step in your, development cycle. When you do that, there's like this Game of Thrones line I love, the milk's out of the udder. Like, you're not getting it back. You're not putting the milk back in. Like, it's out. Like, so when you go onto Steam, you don't get to do that again. And that's, for several factors, that's a critical moment, often almost always, for a PC release, is when you go on to that, the PC's biggest marketplace, and how you perform there, and how you perform with the algorithm the first dozen hours or less, maybe 2 days max. That is such an important time. So you don't want to just jump on an early access going, okay, we need some extra players here, I need some extra feedback, marketing, whatever, we'll figure it out. Don't do that. If you're a developer, that would be bad, because you're going to sell very little copies. And then when you get to 1.0, it's going to be really hard to rally, unless the game the early access just went swimmingly and you found ways to bring players in that, is generally very hard to do post your early access launch, we'll say. So for us, it was just about doing, like you said, like we talked about with 2, we had to have like the opposite result of 2. 2, like you said, everything we did for 2, if it was in early access, would have been we wouldn't have to, it just would have been a different universe, or alternate reality, because when it's CSD2 1.0 and the reviews are coming in negatively, or at least not as positively as we had hoped, that sent David into a full scramble. Like you said, a lot of that content, a lot of those improvements, those updates that came in were based off of that negative reaction.
Yeah.
Now it was reactionary.
Right. And same as here, except for we kind of planned it and it's all positive.
Right.
It's all positive reactionary, because it's not done yet. So that there's still that, if I don't like something, I can voice that to the developers in a really calm way. Most of our people do this, like most of our players do this. And they don't see the fact that it's not 1.0, it's not like, well, this is the choice they made and I hate it, and I'm going to just be upset about that. That's kind of, I think, how the psychology behind CSD2 versus CSD3 is that people are just in a way better mindset about it, because it's still, we have it mostly done, but we're still adding, levels and cutscenes to the campaign. And that's the kind of, adding achievements, things of that sort. Those are what we're adding in early access. It's not going to be a prolonged period. It's going to be about 3 months here. Maybe 4. We'll be out in May and June, I'm hoping, on all 3 consoles, and then PC will be 1.0. So I think that it's really about, it's a marketing choice. It's a PR choice when you think about early access. If you're just looking for additional, player interest and support, kind of getting not just, QA, but feedback on your game, then, do what you can to, it's a little bit tooth and nail, but off of Steam, but do what you can to build an audience off of Steam first. You have to go about it that way, I think. Otherwise, you're in a position to potentially launch to absolute crickets in 2020. People think that, some developers think, oh, I'll have low sales. No, you'll have no sales if you're not prepared. If you don't have a bunch of wish lists, if you don't have a bunch of fans waiting there. Steam is very similar to the mobile markets now. There's too many products for people to visually take in and digest all of them. They're going to skip over 99% of them. So you have to do something to stand out. Anyway, I'm running off on my own job.
Yeah,
stuff,
we hear that a lot from a lot of different developers we've interviewed in the past. It's just an uphill battle trying to get your game noticed by even just passive Steam users, it seems.
Yeah, I think the key is to start early, and I'm not going to go on about that, but just don't wait until a month or 2 before your release. Don't be, if your budget allows for you to do this, don't just say this is the line in the sand. We have to release by this time, or we're going to release by this time, no matter what. Because if the numbers aren't there, it's not even it's always a gamble, but it's a really bad gamble at that point. You're not even making a good gamble. That's what we're trying to do now, is make good gambles, and maybe set the deck a little bit in our favor, with different promotions, reaching out to people like months in advance, weeks in advance, like for streamers. Hey, we're going to have this ready to go. You know why? Because you, me, everybody in the industry, we're really busy. We're constantly just having to take on all this different stuff. Maybe it's because the market has so many games on it, but I also just think it's the market's exploded in people and those individual conversations and all that. So, just thinking, oh, you're gonna pick up my game and play it today because it launched today. You can't do that anymore. People don't have schedules for that. They'll go, whoop, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. Like, there's no way I could fit this into my schedule. And even if I wanted to, I've never even heard of this game before. Make me hear about your game 2-3 times before you release. So all that's to say, if you want to if you want to really fight the uphill battle in a healthy way that you feel like we're making ground, obviously you need to have a game that's interesting to the commercial, audience. But if you can confirm that in whatever way in the early going, it's really about just continuing to build fan base through mailing list signups, Steam wish lists, all that kind of stuff, so that you can look at those numbers and say, hey, look, we have a fighting chance to hit these, sales expectations. Otherwise, you're just taking a really, really bad swing that you're hoping maybe a couple of people that are really notable pick up and share a word about it. But even then, that barely works anymore. So it's just, it's a tough market.
Releasing a game now, is a daunting task enough as it is. But did you know that there is a series of books that could tell you exactly how games were made in the past? I'm talking about classics, and that's going to bring us to Patrick Hickey Jr.'s The Minds Behind the Adventure Games.
What a segue!
Right now,
what a segue!
This is the sponsor for this show. Let me tell you something. We're talking about classics like Grand Theft Auto. We're talking about Maximum Carnage. We're talking about Pitfall, ladies and gentlemen. When these games were being made, there was no Steam. There was no wish listing. You know what the wish list was? When you got the Toys R Us catalog and you circled some games that you thought looked cool. Oh, Spider-Man's on the cover? Yeah, I want that. Well, what went into making these crazy games? Well, you check out The Minds Behind the Adventure Games. Again, it's out now. You could buy it on Amazon. You could buy it at Barnes & Noble. You could buy it on PatrickHickeyJr.com. And if you do buy it at PatrickHickeyJr.com, he personalizes each and every single order. You could also get this on Kindle. You could get this on Google Play, the Google Magazine Rack, or whatever the hell they call it over there.
It's the Skyrim of books.
It's the Skyrim of books, and this is the second in a series of books in the Minds Behind the Games series. The Minds Behind the Games was the first book. This is the Minds Behind the Adventure Games. He's got the Minds Behind the Shooter Games coming out soon. He's got the Minds Behind the Sports Games. Patrick has been on our show twice. He's an awesome author, and the stories that these books tell will have your mouth agape with how crazy some of the development cycles were for this. In the first book, the story of how the ET, the extraterrestrial, was made on the Atari 2600 in 6 weeks? Are you fucking kidding me? 6 weeks? We can't even write a podcast doc in 6 weeks. It's insane. Patrick E. Jr.'s The Minds Behind the Adventure Games. Tell them the boys at Dual Screen sent you. And that is going to bring us to rapid fire questions. This is our favorite little segment.
Eric.
This is where we just we let the professionalism go. And at this point, we're just going to get to know you a little bit, and hopefully, maybe we'll spark a friendship.
That sounds amazing.
I think we're already there.
I'm all in with this, so this is great.
So we have Steven. Hold on, we have on our PAX East docket a lunch schedule, a little hour time slot.
Mm-hmm.
We should also visit Eric during that time slot.
Of course. You and I don't need an hour to eat, Andy.
Yeah.
We barely need 5 minutes.
Open invite
anyway.
Open invite for you to stop by whenever. No appointments necessary. If you want one, though, let me know. But otherwise, just stop by for sure.
Definitely.
All right, Eric. It is time for the ceremonial first question here. This is a question we've given all of our guests.
And it's also very appropriate given the topic at hand.
Indeed. So, this is a food question. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Personally, no.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's the make or break, Steven. He's the expert here.
Sure. I'll let you have this victory, Andy, because I have a feeling the other two I'm going to definitely win. You go, sir.
My entire family loves it, and I cannot hate on them whatsoever. But I just, I'm such a plain Jane with the pepperoni. You know, I don't want to think about it.
I love pepperoni.
You know what they say, Eric? It's easy to love family, but it's not easy to like them. And this is why. Because
Andy, next question.
All right. Ooh. Would you rather have the power of flight or invisibility?
Flight. Invisibility is super questionable in 2020, I think, to have. I just think you're just asking for trouble.
The word you're looking for is nefarious. And
Why
this is what
is it
Andy
always
can't
a
seem to get
moral
through his
dilemma
head.
with you people? Like, you're a sick bunch.
There's nothing you could do that isn't nefarious.
Well, not just that. I just think.
What are you doing that's so nefarious?
I just think if I was doing something invisible and it was, wholesome, not nefarious, people are like, that's pretty nefarious. They just immediately assume you're invisible. I think there's a presumption going on. So I didn't know that we were going to be. I was answering like to or against the you guys. So this is
it's like an internal debate. There's some common questions we ask here on the podcast, and there's a running tally of who gets what. So it's a fun metric to track.
So
I have a new one. I have a new one that I want to add to this.
Oh, you can't just be doing this now.
No. I think this is apropos.
Do you know where I stand on the topic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do.
Okay, we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Eric, in Contra, when you pick up the letter S, is that a shotgun?
No. You're leading the witness.
Is it a shotgun?
No, Eric,
yes
what
no?
does the S stand for is what you should be asking.
Oh, because it'd be shotgun or special. Is that what the two choices are? Or was there another one?
See? He didn't even pick
see, Eric doesn't even know what Contra is.
We win.
Qualified.
It's a victory for me. And see, the manual of the game calls it a spread gun, and therefore everyone calls it a stupid spread gun. But if you're talking about weapons, clearly it's a buckshot. It's a shotgun. That is why it is an S. It's just Konami thought Americans were idiots.
No, you keep saying this.
Gun.
No one thought we were idiots.
Everybody thinks we're idiots.
And
next question.
It's a gun that spreads.
Okay.
Moving on.
Next question.
I think you're a little special in the head, Steven.
Next question.
Let's see. What's the most expensive thing you've ever broken?
I fused. This is not the most. I don't know. I had something happen 2 days ago that I can bring up right now. So that's what I'm going to do because I can't remember anything that like super expensive that I broke. But when you have kids, they have little plastic things that you're like, what does this even go to? And at one point, my partner was like, you should wash these in the dishwasher. So I did. One fell down and fused like the coil in a way that, again, whether it's broken or not, I think it's still TBD right now. We're still kind of figuring it out. That could cost me a little bit though. That one could definitely hurt me a little bit, but I'm trying to think of anything, broken. Expensive. I mean, that's such a specific question. I'm trying to like jog my memory.
Break a bone.
My brother has broken a ton. I've broken none. The one that comes to mind, this has nothing to do with anything of those questions, but I felt the worst I've ever felt is I was a theater kid, and we were doing the musical Les Miserables, and I was Thénardier, and I had a wife, Madame Thénardier, and we have this little sequence where I throw. If none of this makes any sense to you, don't worry about it.
Master of the House.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, woo! All right,
I was Valjean in high school, my friend.
That's amazing. That's a whole other podcast. But anyway, there's a part where whether or not it's called for or not in the actual script, there's a part in our show where I was going to throw a bag of coins basically across the stage to Madame Thénardier, my wife. And we always made eye contact, and I would throw it. It was a bag of washers. So like very thick, obviously that kind of stuff. Yep. You know what? It just like left like 3 like kind of indents on her forehead. I have never felt worse like for a longer period of time like than that. That's it. There's just nothing worse. There's just nothing worse than like hitting one of your friends like that on accident and injuring them or making them cry. You're just like, I just feel, and everybody's like Why? Look at you. Why? It was a real Larry David moment too, because you're like, I didn't mean to. You're just like, I didn't mean to.
And her love for the theater at the same time.
Like, it just it's a classic. When you said break something expensive, nothing came to mind. But when I said break, hurt somebody, it did something that hurt somebody. That immediately that came to mind.
I like it. I like
great
it.
non-answer, right?
Diving deep here.
Which Iron Chef would be the best, and which would be the worst on Cook Serve Delicious 3?
I've never watched Iron Chef. Not once. I have caught it, like, passing by. I'm maybe a casual here because I'm a British baking, kind of guy.
Okay.
Yeah, baby.
So that my partner and I dived into like all the BBC ones, and then the Netflix, which is it's okay. It's not the original, like the BBC with like you said, Mary Berry and Paul and
Paul was still a great guy, but it's the original. Those two female comedians that were the original duo on there.
They were great. They were really enjoyable.
Like the educational part of the show. They would go to like some old cottage.
Well, that's because it went from being a BBC show or a England-based show to a Netflix-based show, which was like, who cares? It's American.
Right.
We don't care about being wholesome or
the learning part.
Do not teach anyone anything.
Show me the food. I want to see the food.
Because that's also, because I'm trying to like save face here since I don't watch Iron Chef. I'm like, hey, I watch other stuff with cooking. I'm a huge England-based Ramsay show man. If it's US based, it's like, what is this caked up makeup man who's just screaming, who has no positives to offer at all?
All for show, yeah.
It's terrible,
in the States versions, yeah.
And it's really tired at this point. So I'm surprised that it still has legs. I'm surprised US reality TV show still has legs. I guess some, obviously a portion of our country is still like, yeah, but I am not into it anymore. I like the British watching some of those British shows. It was like, wow, look at them support each other and really care about each other, even though they're competing against one another. That to me, I'm like, this is why I'm going to watch this show. This show has me hooked because they have good people on it that I'm like, hey, they're human and they're normal people, like, as opposed to just, what do they want from us? We'll do it. That's American reality television, it seems like. So,
100% accurate.
All right.
So I apologize for this.
Whatever.
That's all right.
I pretty much trashed that segment for you guys, though. I really had a bunch of terrible answers.
Great, though. It was really good.
All right, we have two more questions.
All
Andy,
right.
you get the one, and then I'll do the final.
I have a fun one. Here we go.
Okay.
Would you rather randomly time travel plus or minus 20 years every time you farted?
Oh my gosh.
Or would you rather teleport to a different place on Earth every time you sneezed?
I sneeze more than I fart, I think. This is an important consideration, I think.
It is.
This would be exciting.
20 years in the past or 20 years in the future?
Right. So you could, let's say, fart, go in the past, then fart again, then end up back where you're supposed to be.
But I could still fart again and go to 2040?
Right.
That's the tough
sneeze and end up.
To me, the unknown of the future is what kind of worries me. I know I can go back 20 years and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
If I sneeze and I go somewhere where I shouldn't be, based on whatever my characteristics, like I just shouldn't be there. This is time travel too. If you go back too far, they'll just kill you, right? Like if you go back to a point where the past where you're wearing like Nikes, they're just
that's when you go and look for a good farting.
They're just gonna I think they're just gonna stab you without question, right? Like there's not gonna be a whole lot of debate about like, hey, who are you?
He's a witch,
right? It's gonna be very quick decision making about who you are, and that's kind of it. So I think I'm gonna take the time travel fart. But that only because I think that's slightly less risky for for living, like staying alive, than the sneezing and going everywhere, because I can sneeze like 20 times within, a matter of minutes. I have allergies, all that kind of stuff. I live in a place where the air goes dry or something like that. I'm in big trouble. I'm doing a world tour, and some of those places I'm hitting on the world tour might not be super welcoming to me. I don't know. I can't guarantee that. I almost can guarantee that will be the case at some point. I'll sneeze myself into a place where I'll be like, oh crap, I need to sneeze again. And I wouldn't be able to at that point. And then it would just be like kind of game over. But
final question.
2040 might be bad too. Anyway.
2040, yeah, I don't know if we'll make it that far.
Risky.
There's got to be something hurtling towards Earth that's going to put us out of our misery. Final question. The final question, it is tradition to ask this as the final question. And based on the speed of which you answer the other questions, I'm very curious to know if this is going to be a off-the-cuff answer. The question, of course, is Andy or Steven?
Sandy. Don't do that to me, you guys. Like, I think that's really cruel. And it wasn't even it was a question, but it had no basis whatsoever. So am I supposed to presume, pick my favorite? Nope. Pick the one that
who knows?
Pick the one that I push off a cliff. I've had a really good time with both of you guys. I'd rather neither of you get pushed off the cliff. Like you said, this was supposed to end in friendship for the three of us. And I feel like this is, again, a non-answer, but Steven or Andy?
You answered the question. That's fine.
You
said Sandy. Well, we got it.
I gave you the off the cuff. If you wanted me to go really deep dive on it, we'll get that maybe next time. So
you got until PAX East, Eric, to figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the show. That has been the Dual Screens podcast. If you want to follow us on social media, we are at NDS Podcast. I am at Batchild27. Andy is at Pantsky. And where could everybody find you and the game and everything else, Eric?
Cheers for having me on, guys. CookServeDelicious.com. Find us on Steam, CookServeDelicious 3. We're Vertigo Gaming Inc. We're not Vertigo Games. That's a different, really cool VR studio. That's not us. We're Vertigo Gaming. Just doesn't really matter to anybody. I'm positive, but
just in case.
I'm a company guy, right? So just got to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to follow us on Facebook, you do so at facebook.com/groups/Dual Screens Podcasts. And we're also, we have Facebook.com/Dual Screens Pod. It's dualscreens.com, DOTCOM. I'm sorry. So yeah, you could give us a like on there as well. Follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/dualscreenstreams. Our theme song, Retro Chatters by Bradley Parsons at Train Sound Studio, excuse me. Andrew Douglas, thank you for our art. Matt Murray, thank you. Again, if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/NDS podcast. If you want to check out our store, check out our wares, go to dualscreens.com/store. That'll take you to our Teespring. Thank you once more to the minds behind the Adventure Games by Patrick Hickey Jr. That is it. And we nailed it. We did it. It's perfect timing. The family is here. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Eric. We love you all.
Oh, my God.
This has been Dual Screens Podcast. And as always, please be excellent to each other.